What's up, folks? What's up, folks? We are live both on TikTok and Facebook, and this will be uploaded to YouTube and Spotify later on. So, we got some topics to get into. Recently, I made a video regarding abortion and it being a form of birth control. I know it's not necessarily that in all cases, but there are some statistics that people asked for in the comments. I'd love to give them right here. So there's a website I pulled up here, the Charlotte Lozier Institute. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct. It's spelled Lozier. They've got a diagram here that I think explains it quite well. It says 95.9% of abortions were elective and unspecified reasons. This would have been an article, or at least the photo was published back in 2022, and the fact sheet was updated on January 14th, 2023, and again updated in May 24th, 2024. There were some other reasons. Less than 2% were rape and incest. Less than 1% were a risk to in their words, risk to the woman's life or a major bodily function. All those are awful cases, but it's a clear sign that right now, abortion, broadly speaking, is being used as birth control. We need to step up for the unborn. The pro-life movement needs to get their act together. There's some great fighters here in the U.S., but we need to step up. You look at it, my generation, there's estimates, at least one estimate here, roughly maybe up to 26 million people. My generation doesn't exist. Where do you think they went? They didn't just magically up and disappear. There's a reason. A large portion, and I said a large portion of my generation doesn't exist. And just so you don't think my statistics are wild, there's a quite trusted organization. Trying to remember how to pronounce the name. I think it's Guttmacher Institute. I could be butchering the pronunciation of that. But they've got on their website, let's look at it here. In 2004, they had a survey. It was completed with, 1,209 abortions. It had patients at 11 providers, and they did in-depth interviews. I'm just going to read you guys the whole thing. Not the whole article, but the paragraph here. In 2004, a structured survey was completed by 1,209 abortion patients at 11 large providers, and in-depth interviews were conducted with 38 women at 4 states. Bivariate analysis examined differences in the reasons for abortions across subgroups, and multivariate logistic regression models assessed associates between respondent characteristics and reported reasons. So the results. Let's get down to it. Okay. 74%. Let's see. The reasons most frequently cited were that having a child would interfere with a woman's education, work, or ability to care for dependents. 74%. That she could not afford a baby, now 73%. And that she did not want to be a single mother or was having relationship problems, 48%. Those are some pretty big numbers. Now, although there might be women in tough situations, does that mean the child should pay the price? I don't think so. Not at all. Let's go further down. Let's see. This, I think, was also the 2004 study, and I read directly from their website. I'm going to read again. The most common sub-reason given was that the women could not afford a baby now because she was unmarried. That's 42%. 38% indicated that having a baby would interfere with their education, and the same proportion said it would interfere with their employment. In a related vein, 34% said they could not afford a child because they were students or were planning to study. So I completely understand having goals. I completely understand having aspirations. If you want to have a career, that's completely fine. If you want to go back to school, that's completely fine. But if your goals are interfered with by a child that is yours, what takes a higher priority? That baby or your job? I'd say the baby. Why does a job take precedent over a human life? Although these might be tough situations, it should be an easy moral question to ask. What matters more, your job or your kid? The kid should matter more every single time. So, although these are tough situations, it clearly comes out that abortion is being used in a lot of cases, quite frankly, the majority, as birth control. That's no shade at the ladies. That's not at all. But it's an objective reality we have to recognize. And I mean, go back to the original statistics I mentioned. Yeah, 95.9% were elected and unspecified reasons from the Charlotte Lozier Institute. Those numbers are pretty hard to deny. So, yeah, tough situations, but abortion is being used in most cases as birth control. That's an undeniable fact. Once again, that's no shade at the ladies. And we also, as pro lifers, need to step up and advertise the resources that are available. There are pregnancy resource centers up the wazoo and churches that want to help. There are just average people every day that would say, hey, if you don't want the kid, we'll take him or her. Adoption is not a crazy option. People want to adopt kids. And with the current system, that's another thing. As a pro lifer and someone in politics, I want to see reform come in the adoption system. We need to have safe parents. We need to have parents ready and available. And we need to make it so that the parents that want to adopt, if they are safe parents, make it so that they can. It shouldn't be a nightmare and a legal battle to adopt a child. You know, on the study I mentioned that said 95.9% elective and unspecified reasons, there was also, it said 1.2% abnormality in the unborn baby. So let me ask you this. If you have an ultrasound done and there's a birth defect, or they see that the child might have Down syndrome or some condition like that, why is the child any less valuable than the average person? Why? It's a valid question. For me, I have epilepsy. I have a section in my brain that misfires, therefore causing grand mal seizures. I have a health issue, but I'm not any less valuable than the average Joe standing next to me in the grocery store. So, let me ask you this. As a full grown adult, because I have a health issue, does anyone have a right to end my life due to the inconvenience it could cause to my family members? No. So, why, as a fully grown adult, is that any different than the unborn child? There could be health issues in unborn children and fully grown adults, but for some reason, we seem to value the fully grown adults these days. Why? So, okay, someone says, tell someone with Down syndrome that you know their struggle because you have seizures. I'm not saying my struggle is any worse or any better than theirs, but the point is, health issues shouldn't determine whether your life has value or not. So my struggle is probably They don't equate at all in terms of severity. But whether you're having a heart attack, you have seizures, you have Down syndrome, whatever it is, your life is valuable. So why shouldn't we protect it? No matter who you are, we should do everything we can to protect your life. We should encourage adoption. We should discourage abortion. We should make it illegal. We need to defend life. We need to bring people to Christ. We need to give people hope. And we need to make sure that, especially when finances are the reason that someone would consider get an abortion, we need to make sure those ladies know there are resources available. And not just the ladies. We need to be telling the men about these situations. If there's a pregnancy resource center or a church that says, hey, we've got you back, and that dude, we might not even know it, but we find out that, oh, he's a father. They're struggling. We can have their back. Those type of ministries, we need to bolster them, give them funding, give them resources, keep them in prayer, and make sure the unborn are defended. Because guess what? They can't defend themselves. I'm 21 and fully grown. I can defend myself. An unborn baby? No. So we need to step up for them. We also need to combat the cultural lies and let these people know that, hey, this isn't the right option. Especially young ladies have been told for years now that that's empowering and it's one of their rights. And the guys have been told to shut up about it. They've been told to have no opinion on it. Let me ask you this. During slavery, was it okay for a white man to have an opinion on slavery? Yeah, of course it was. It was wrong. Okay, I'm not a woman. I can't give birth to a child. But I can see a moral wrong. I've got an opinion on it. I'm going to be vocal on it. I don't think that's a crazy concept to think about. But so many men have been told to shut up on these issues that they're passive about it. We need to defend life in every case. Step up for the unborn. Step up for those who can't defend themselves. And you know what? Topic shift, but step up for those who can defend themselves. We've got situations here in modern day society where insanity runs our politics. We've got candidates that know if they join with basic logic, their base will excommunicate them. Graham Plattner, I mentioned this on at least one of the recent. Can I borrow your hat? I need to take it to a dump. That's funny. Graham Plattner, he is running for Senate here in the state of Maine. We've got three major candidates. We've got Senator Susan Collins, Governor Janet Mills, and Graham Plattner. Three major candidates. One of them supports men in men's sports and women in women's sports and no other way around it. Graham Plattner, he just joined Janet Mills' camp. Doesn't want to defend the women. Women can defend themselves in 99.9% of cases, but I'm going to step up with them. Maine Mama, an account who's a big supporter of mine and other fellow conservative outreaches, she was talking, I think it was 2 lives ago, regarding how roughly 90% of the people that have signed her petitions to get a referendum question put on the ballot next year to get males out of women's sports, it's been 90% men for her. Men are stepping up to defend these ladies. We are making sure our state, Maine, is a great state for young ladies and older ladies to live in. We need safe, logical communities. And sadly, we have got a section of the political world that has gone so far off the deep end that they can't recognize a biological reality that in 99% of cases, a man is going to be stronger than a woman and more capable within a sporting event. Therefore, they should not be in women's sports. It's a moral standpoint, and it's just a logical standpoint. Usually, if your moral standpoints are in the right spot, your logic is going to be in the right spot. They kind of go hand in hand. So, guys, step up, be logical, fight for women, fight for the unborn, fight for Christ. We need to bring our society back to Christ. We need logic brought back. It's pretty simple. So let's make Maine great again. Let's make our state, let's make our country great again. I know some of us aren't happy with how DC has been running things, but we also need to recognize the fact that when you're on social media all the time, your algorithm's going to see things that you've interacted with and feed you more and more and more of it. You look at, okay, I'm a hardcore Republican. We all can see. Just look at my shirt, look at my hat. Representative Thomas Massey, he was talking about his voting record. He votes with the Republican Party 91% of the time. As of recent, my support has jumped for him. But that still shows me that 91% of the time, he agrees with the efforts the Republicans are making. Before Charlie Kirk was assassinated, he was backing up President Trump. I think there was a video, I'm correct, it would have been roughly August. He was still backing President Trump. And one of his goals, he said, was defending President Trump and J.D. Vance. And you know what? If there's anyone in Republican conservative politics and in the Christian movement that I trust, it's Charlie Kirk. You could tell he was a Holy Spirit-led man. I trust him. And there are other folks that for day-to-day things in politics I trust. But I trust him. If he was backing President Trump, it doesn't mean I have to support everything he does. I'm not one of those folks. Overall, if Charlie trusted him, I'll back him. So, sometimes I may not agree with every move. Sometimes he might drive me nuts. But Thomas Massey, the one who's either gained a lot of support or a lot of hate, he still votes with the Republican Party 91% of the time. I think if you look at that, Massey's record and Charlie's support of President Trump, I'm still in a pretty good standing. I think we all need to recognize that. If you're on the right side of the aisle, shut up for 2 seconds. Think, hey, is it worth ripping apart the conservative movement? It's an issue we've had since Charlie was assassinated. There's some folks that have been talking about there's an open spot for Alita. We don't have, quite frankly, the knight in shining armor we had, Charlie. It's too bad to see. Folks like Nick Fuentes have gained more of a following, more publicity. It's too bad to see that Tucker Carlson interviewed him. Now, I understand Tucker can interview whoever he wants. But Tucker's got a much bigger following than I do. If Tucker does something, people are going to notice it. He shouldn't have interviewed him. It's not that we want to restrict his free speech, but if Tucker interviews someone like Nick Fuentes that builds a following for Nick, and it gives more publicity to who he is, it also gives him a chance to present himself as, I don't know if moderate's the right way to put it, but present himself in such a manner that makes him seem more, I think, palatable to the average Joe. With a lot of the things that Nick Fuentes has said, the average person is sane enough, even if you're not a Bible-thumping, born-again Christian, the average person is sane enough to say, hey, yeah, no, that guy is not someone we want to be associated with. But with Charlie gone, he has gained popularity. It's like someone opened the floodgates to what some folks are calling the woke right. And it's a pain because I feel like I'm caught in the middle. When I look at social media, I'm able to say, okay, Nick Fuentes, don't want anything with him. I also don't want to be a moderate. If I criticize President Trump or Republicans down in D.C., I've been called, it was either a traitor or a rhino, I think it was. So where do I go? I'm a hardcore Republican, but I'm also not going to bow down as if it's some sort of cult. If Republicans do something wrong, all right, they did something wrong. So 6 months ago, I could have called myself someone in the base. But now if I am in the base, I risk being too close to someone like Nick Fuentes. I don't want anything to do with someone like that. Someone like Candace Owens. She used to be a hardcore conservative fighter, and now she's ripping apart the conservative movement. I understand looking for solutions, looking for transparency. If there's a conspiracy, trying to find answers. I get that, and I agree with it. But if it's all you do, you're just going to rip apart the movement. You're going to get focused on conspiracies and not actually making progress for the nation. We need to step up and, like I was talking about earlier, fight for the unborn. Fight to make sure women have safe spaces, not just in sports, but in the restrooms, the locker rooms. We need to make sure we lower the cost of living. Make it so that the average Joe can afford to live. Make it so that young people like myself can afford a home. Because right now, stuff like that isn't affordable. Neither party seems to have a solution on healthcare. I mentioned earlier, I'm an epileptic. We need to make sure that medications are affordable. I'm going back to school, yes, to make it so I can boost my political career, but also make it so that I can get a job that can pay for my medications. We need to make life affordable. So if we're constantly concerned with conspiracies, whether they're true or not, and some of them might be, we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to get in an endless circle of yelling at each other rather than saying, hey, how can we move forward? I support a search for truth, but we also need to be able to multitask, fight for truth, fight for transparency, and also make progress on making the life of the average Joe affordable and prosperous. So let's make sure the conservative movement is actually locked in on making life better, bringing people to Christ, and not opening up spots for popularity for folks like Nick Fuentes. So, yeah, I kind of went on a rant there, but it's true. So, make Maine great again. Get the Republican Party and conservatives in D.C. back on track. Make life affordable. Bring common sense into politics again. Not that it was ever there. I mean, Senator John Kennedy said the human brain starts working in the womb, essentially, and then it stops working when you get elected to Congress. I guess that's relatively accurate. I'm paraphrasing there. But it's true. Fight for the unborn. Fight to make life affordable. Some basic stuff, but it takes people stepping up. I read directly for 99% of what I read from the Guttmacher Institute. Let me make sure I read that name correctly. Yeah, Guttmacher Institute. Read directly from their website. Read from the Lozier Institute. Read from, oh shoot, what was the other one? I missed it now. But I read directly from all the websites I read from. The abortion situation here in this nation is not what it should be. Fight for the unborn. Fight to make Maine a safe space for women. Make our state the state it needs to be. So I encourage you guys, step up in 2026. Step up, not in 2026, but now, and keep going. Fight to make Maine the place we all want it to be. Thank you guys so much. Have a fantastic day, and God bless.